affects healthcare. And of course, it says a new deadly infection confronting healthcare. Of course, it's not necessarily new. The threat has always been out there. It just seems in 2015 and throughout this year, healthcare organizations were definitely hit a little bit more than others with ransomware. And today's topic is to cover the endpoint and endpoint security solutions. We have a few members of Carbon Black joining the webinar that will be driving this, and graciously Tom Stacy from IBM as we start moving forward through this webinar. So hopefully everybody is on now. I see the attendance list going up and everybody can hear me. So with that, we'll start walking forward. You can hit the next slide, Tom. So again, my name is Dan Powers, the Security Risk Compliance Officer at Champion Solutions Group. We have Chris Strand from Carbon Black. We did have a slight pinch hitter change as Chris Berenger is not available at the moment, but we do have Tom Stacy from IBM who will be driving part of the demo or most of the demo today. So we appreciate these guys for being on today. We'll take a look at what our agenda is for today. You can hit next. We're going to go over a quick brief what is Champion Solutions Group, what is the company around. We really want to take only a couple minutes to do that and really get down into the Carbon Black side for endpoint security and integration with other IBM software, the real meat of the topic today. So I will just take a few more minutes before I hand it over to Tom and Chris to go into the details. But as we move forward, I just wanted to give you a quick overview of what Champion Solution Group does. So of course we have 5 different practices that we focus mainly on, the first one being mobility. Inside of there, it's basically more than just your basic MDM. It's really EMM, or Enterprise Mobility Management, which includes everything about the life cycle of your mobility devices as these things proliferate more and more in our organizations. It's about how do you secure these, how do we make sure that we have these working with the rest of our organization properly, what about the applications running on them, and so forth. So again, when you're thinking about mobile, a little bit more than just your MDM, basic device management. Of course, cloud computing. Champion Solutions Group has been well known in the Office 365 and on the message side with the Office 365 adoption. And of course, coming out of that, as more people are looking at cloud-based technologies, whether that's private, hybrid, or public clouds, Champion offers consultant services through various vendors, whether that's SoftLayer, Azure, or Microsoft Azure, for cloud opportunities, how that benefits your organization. Of course, we're going to hit the security pillar, and that's going to be part of our focus today. We look at all the different layers that how it affects security throughout your organization, from your next generation firewalls to the SIM, user access management, identity management, and of course, endpoint security. Because when we really look at it, that is your new perimeter today, not just where your firewall and network resides, but it's really that mobility and that endpoint where we have to focus on compliance and regulation requirements around that, and viruses and zero-day with malware protection. Of course, that's going to be a focus today. The other pillar that Champion focuses on is data management and analytics. So again, being able to help you with your capacity planning around big data management, and more importantly, what are you going to do with that data afterwards to make sure that you can get the best reaction from the data that you're collecting. And of course, the last part is services and consulting, which covers all of those other topics we currently talked about, and other things including network assessments, designs, architectures, implementations, and so forth. So very high level, that is what Champion Solutions Group focuses on. And now I'm going to look at where I sit in, which is the security side or secure ops of Champion Solutions Group. And this very simplistic picture that I brought up was something that's on our website and with our web survey that we do. And it's just trying to show you all the different parts from a very simplistic picture of what is affecting your environment. So over on the left-hand side, we have all of the incoming information into your environment, which is mostly electronic. But of course, you do have physical media as well, whether that's removable media, backup tapes you bring off-site and on-site, and how do you make sure that that stuff is secured. Inside of your operations, again, we have that perimeter. Most people think of that as that firewall, that next-generation firewall, as I had mentioned. And as we drill in a little bit, we're really looking at users, devices, identity management, and your applications and data. And that's where we kind of focus on, is how do all these things integrate together? How do we secure these things across the board? And when we get into it, all this data moving up into your SIM, as Gartner would tell you from a security perspective, it really is something that should be one of the first things that you do so you get a broad picture. And recently some great things about wire data. And of course, on the other side, it's your outgoing connections, your B2B transactions, your emails, and again, your physical media. I bring that picture up because what I'm going to do real quick is look at the next slide, which is a survey that Champion Solutions Group put together. And what this is, it's an anonymous web survey that we try to help folks that will take the survey and cover each of those pillars on that previous slide that I talked about and ask you some simple questions. It'll take approximately 20 minutes to fill it out. Again, it is anonymous, and it gives you a risk factor score. And really what we're trying to do here is help people look at what their security posture is today and find out what they're good in, maybe what they're lacking a little bit in, and maybe where they need to spend a little bit of time. And when we engage with customers, we certainly do that simply because when we have our first face-to-face meeting, we can dive into exactly where some of the gaps are in your environment. Some of those may be known to you, and some of them may be not, and just simply by taking this survey, we can get your mind thinking. So today, of course, we're going to focus in on that endpoint. You can hit next there, Tom. And that's really looking at that endpoint side of it. As I had mentioned, traditionally the firewall was that perimeter. But in today's market, in today's computing world, it really is the endpoint is your perimeter. It's that endpoint that sits out there, and we really want to lock that down, and that's the focus of today, is to making sure that we can lock down that endpoint. And obviously with the considering malware, CryptoLocker, the ransomware things, and what comes out of our survey that we do, if you take it and put your email address in, is you get about a 20-page summary document, which I had over there, that just describes, giving the data that you put into us, is where you're really good and where you may need a little bit of help. So again, great tool to use going forward. And one more slide going forward here, Tom. So again, next steps. Again, like I said, I wanted to make this quick and get really into the meat of the subject. Today's presentation will be emailed out to everybody who joined the webinar. Of course, you can call Champion. We'd love to engage with you and assist you at any time. Some more PDFs from the Carbon Black folks we're going to forward out to folks that are really around the threats and ransomware and what steps to take to help protect yourself against it. And finally, as I said, that risk survey, which again can be taken anonymously and give you that executive summary. So again, I thank everybody for showing up today. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Chris and Tom.
Thanks. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate that quick overview on that. Chris, I'm going to go ahead and let you speak a little bit about Carbon Black, then we'll go right into the demo. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, absolutely. No problem.
Great.
Hey, everyone. It's Christopher Strand here from Carbon Black, and thanks Champion Solutions for having me here today and to talk about the going concern around ransomware and across both healthcare and financial industries, particularly within the healthcare industry in these past few days. Now, at Carbon Black, we have a litany of solutions that cross bridge the gap on the endpoint from the standpoint of threat protection, monitoring, and providing visibility and whatnot into that particular endpoint. And a particular concern is around the data or the keys to the kingdom that are on that particular endpoint. At the end of the day, any solution will focus on ensuring that we're protecting that core critical data. And just had a couple of things I wanted to bring to your attention around the situation with ransomware right now in the industry, particularly in the healthcare industry. I've been on a number of panels and committees and such in regards to the Omnibus rule and the HIPAA high-tech security rule as it pertains to HIPAA high-tech as a regulation in the healthcare industry, which is enforced by the Office of Civil Rights. And what we're noticing right now in terms of what we're up against as healthcare institutions and whatnot is that the game has definitely changed. Now, this is advice from the Office of Civil Rights and the HHS, which reside over the HIPAA High-Tech Act. And essentially, they describe a breach as basically, it's pretty simplistic, acquisition, access, or use of PHI, protect healthcare information, in a manner not permitted under the privacy rule. So basically, in a ransomware situation, that's exactly what happens. So whether that patient or protected healthcare data or your data in that case is is accessed, encrypted, locked away, and or copied over to a malicious server is technically in breach as defined by the HIPAA privacy rule. We can go to the next slide, please. So a little more on that. So the HHS and the OCR actually provided some federal guidance around HIPAA. Back in July, well, it started around March, and in July they offered a bit of a briefing on, or guidance on, how to view this in terms of, is it really a breach as pertains to ransomware? And it's unequivocally, at this point, pretty much a yes. So any type of ransomware attack where they're accessing, or in normal cases, they'll copy that information and then will encrypt the information that you have on your side, it's putting you in a position where you can't access that. So they have basically accessed that illegally on top of the HIPAA HITECH Act. So that is technically considered a breach. That was the Department of Health and Human Sciences in July. And as well, out of the Office of Civil Rights, basically mentioning that in with that guidance, when that healthcare information is encrypted, or even if it's not stolen during a breach has technically occurred, because the encryption is one stage of access that will be considered an illegal type of access. So unauthorized individuals basically taking possession or taking control of that particular data. So at the end of the day, we're all more liable. Go to the next slide. And this is really, of course, what it pertains to is our liability. So the game has definitely changed. Common theme, we participated in, and I sat on a panel with SANS Institute, surveying on healthcare institutions, and I wanted to bring some of those results to light here for the webcast today. And what it really showed, and here's just some highlights out of that survey. It's pretty interesting around critical infrastructure as it pertains to healthcare. Between 2014 and 2016, obviously, there's been a big change. You know, it was more about complying with the standards. So they're trying to get a checkbox in 2014. Now things have moved to actually taking that framework, well, the HIPAA HITECH policy or whatever framework you have, it's a configuration framework at the end of the day, which you need to control in order to protect yourself against threats. So the response today out of the survey that we did in July was more of a focus, obviously, on making sure we can protect the integrity of the critical assets that we have, and identify the gaps in those assets faster. And this is where configuration management and the ability to keep things in lockstep with our policy becomes paramount, because at now more of the emphasis is on making sure that configurations are within policy as it pertains to the regulatory policy goals. So rather than trying to get a check mark, we need to focus on solutions to get those goals met up front, meaning make sure that we can keep our configurations in lockstep, make sure where our security policies are in lockstep, and then hence mirror to that framework. So that's what was coming out of the update. Next slide, please. And just a couple more, and then I'll wrap up here. Some of the other results that were really interesting is the focus on infrastructure. Most of the respondents in that particular survey came out over 75% that infrastructure was one of the key things to ensure. So the idea is ensuring that, again, if a configuration change or something as policy actually happens, then we can trace that back to the source and quickly get to that gap. And again, an increased focus on using the intelligence or policies, frameworks, whatever that might be, as per the compliance regulations that we're supposed to be following, match our security policies as well. So we want to make sure that those are effective and being utilized. And a high percentage of respondents were identifying the fact that they were trying to connect those dots essentially. One more slide. And the last piece of the puzzle here that was interesting that came out of that survey on healthcare infrastructure was that we need to ensure internal compliance. So when people talk compliance, they talk HIPAA HITECH healthcare, and they talk about ransomware. Well, HIPAA HITECH finds that ransomware is technically a breach. and in violation of that, so then your liability rises. At the end of the day, we need to ensure that our internal policies are being followed, that we have solutions in place that can protect not just from external things coming into the environment, but also keep us in check internally as well, that our own internal policies, configurations are staying the same, that we're identifying vulnerabilities early, all that good stuff that goes on with where we are actually seeing the cause of a lot of this ransomware. And the survey found that negligence was identified at 28.5%. So very high degree of the causes of this ransomware. I'm going to call it an epidemic. Hopefully it's not yet, but it's getting pretty bad against healthcare, was caused by the insider. So this could be a configuration that wasn't in check, that wasn't kept up to date. The policy, the security policy that was not enforced and not in check was the cause of that particular threat getting through and actually executing the system, as opposed to malicious outside attacks that are targeting the situation. A lot of it's caused by gaps in the system that are internal. All right, next slide, please. So that's it for me from the standpoint of just bringing some of those surveys to light, and as well talking about the interrelation between the endpoint and protecting against threats from standpoint of what Carbon Black does. I'm gonna pass it over to Tom to go in and show you, bring to light some of the aspects of the combined solution, and we'll have a look at how that can better enable you to essentially, as I was saying earlier, connect the dots between the two and actually see how an integration can help to ensure that our policies are in check and then our policies are up to par with what it should be.
Chris, thank you so much for that. We appreciate the overview. And what I want to do is just kind of jump into a typical incident that may occur. Basically, a phishing email someone gets, and kind of walk through that and the integration that we've provided for both best of breed product with QRadar, BigFix, and Carbon Black. So if you have any questions, feel free just to put them in the chat window. We're going to save about 15 minutes at the end of this to make sure we have time to answer any for you. And with that, I'll just kind of go ahead and put on my typical worker hat. And as always, people get these emails, and attachment is a good way to go. For a while, it was Word documents that ask you to enable macros, that sort of thing. People click on it without thinking about it. Of course, you connect back to the bad guy. So putting back on my bad guy hat or my hacker hat, I can go in here, and there's a lot of different things I can do. I can start a remote desktop on keylogger. Right now I'm just going to start a remote shell, and the first thing I'm going to do is see if I can get out. Yeah, I got access. That's great. I'm going to see who I am. And that's used, of course, to enable escalate privileges if we need be. So that's kind of a real quick scenario of how these hacks happen. Happens all the time. It could have just as easily have dropped malware on the desktop instead of creating a CNC connection. But that's basically what we see. Now, just kind of a real quick overview, we've integrated IBM QRadar with Carbon Black response, and we're able to see the events that come in through that. Not only that, we've added some dashboard widgets, and we've even added a tab with the Carbon Black response. Anybody can download this, access the IBM App Exchange, and then we can move from there. So just a real typical incident review is I see this this good guy talking to the bad guy. So I'm just going to go look at it a little bit more. Now, if you notice from here, I have several different options. I can do a process search or a sensor action. So right now, I'm just going to do a process search for that bad guy, see what happens. Yeah, let me bring that up again. And basically what it does is it brings up another page under this Carbon Black response. And I'm just going to go look at the sensors and see what we have as far as events coming in. So one second, let me do a process search. We're going to do process last update time. You can see Adobe Acrobat down here that we clicked on. And from there you can see that basically the whole event has happened. And the real advantage of Carbon Black Response is that it's basically, think of it as a video recorder. It's not on when people walk by, but it's on all the time. So you can see the event that actually took precedence over it. You can see Thunderbird.exe was open, which Adobe Acrobat was executed from here. And from there, it spun off a process, run-d11.exe. So this run11.exe actually has some feeds coming in for the indicator's compromise. You can see VirusTotal has some reports on it already, and this also, the Facebook doesn't match, the icon doesn't match the Facebook. So we're able to see on several different levels why this would be considered dangerous. So moving on from there, you can see that it spun off a process, Internet Explorer.exe, which it hasn't brought in the sensor yet because it's still working on that. Is somebody had a question or anything on that yet? Okay, I thought I heard somebody. So yes. Okay. I thought I heard somebody. Sorry. From Internet Explorer.exe, if we come down to an earlier attack, you can see the same process was run, and it already brought in the events. Internet Explorer, it opened up a command prompt. In the command prompt, you can see the ping and who am I. Not only that, you can see where it was, where they tried to ping to, and so it gets very detailed in the information that you can see. So that's basically looking real quick from an attack to being alerted in QRadar to actually seeing that process run and recorded in Carbon Black. So it's very easy to pass that chain of inspection around to different groups if you have different silos for for inspections or malware analysis or whatever, to being able to have one person run the whole show and very quickly go over the events.
So Tom, I had a quick question for you. So in this scenario, and again, not bashing any other product or anything, but Carbon Black, it's always in that record mode, because it's kind of amazing that you can do that tree view here, right? And before we even knew something went wrong, where we someone downloads a PDF and then we can see all actions and what happened and be able to trace that from a forensic standpoint.
Yeah, it's a huge aspect. And Chris, if you want to elaborate on that, we'd love to hear from the Carbon Black side how that works and
yeah,
advantages.
Absolutely. So that was great to walking through the process tree is exactly the point earlier around utilizing and focusing in on the critical components of your infrastructure. And a lot of these demonstrate the fact that, or demonstrate the way that many ransomware attacks are happening in terms of attackers don't often target a known, strong part of the infrastructure. They'll often go in via a trusted process, as in this case, or through a vulnerability on an atypical platform. So the ability to combine and collect all of this threat intelligence is crucial, and we're looking at that earlier in the survey of healthcare institutions and what they're focusing on. But another way to set this up, and where the integrations in with things like BigFix and whatnot and QRadar become extremely powerful, is the ability then to target specific known or trusted processes, or to negatively target those, essentially in terms of creating things like watch lists and such, where we can set an ability to make sure that the trusted processes that we know are going to happen within our institution are happening ethically, essentially, so that when something comes in that we can figure, essentially, that we can watch and we can see that, wait a second, this is an atypical connection. It's making calls to areas, this process, which is normally trusted, is making calls to atypical sections of my infrastructure and triggering off bizarre commands and whatnot internally using a trusted process. And then we can flag it, essentially. So the ability is twofold, really, in that sense, in that we can help to capture all that information, which becomes crucial, especially with BigFix integration, to make sure that we're connecting the dots and finding the gaps within our configuration policies and whatnot on our assets, but then divulge and expose all the information on both the trusted and perhaps the untrusted processes that are taking place on those infrastructures, so that we can then identify those gaps in security, and also when something comes in through a traditional door, essentially, into our infrastructure, we can grab that easily and then set up an automated process to do so.
And this is Dan. I just wanted to bring up. I'm sorry, Tom. Just one quick thing. Just for everybody that's on the phone, and just so that we explain it, and that's why in our web survey we have the little help section on that page. In the outer circle where I put the SIM, that is what the QRadar is here. So if anybody on the phone doesn't know what QRadar is, that is the SIM in this case, which is collecting all of this data, which your security folks are really looking at. So just to give you or reinforce why that integration between these different products is really, really important.
Yeah, so true. It just makes the workload so much easier on the people that are doing the day-to-day incident reports and that sort of thing. So moving on, that basically from the QRadar, from the incident to the QRadar to the process search and the Carbon Black, and that really gives you that insight and visibility into your network that most people don't have. Moving over to the BigFix side, of course, most of these are caused because of unpatched machines. Let's face it. It hasn't changed much. I think less than 2% of Windows PCs are fully patched with updated and secured software. A lot of people do a pretty good job on keeping the service packs updated and stuff, but it just takes one attack to really kind of hurt you on that. So if you've ever used BigFix, you've probably heard of the site bigfix.me. Bigfix.me has several different fixlets that you can download. We had phase 1 and phase 2 integration. Phase 1, we've allowed fixlets just to kind of install and check the sensor, uninstall, stop Carbon Black, that sort of thing. Phase 2, we've expanded that out to where we can protect the BigFix agent from being turned off or manipulated on the endpoint or stopped on the endpoint. And that's pretty huge for a security product. In addition to that, you can see here, if we ban a file, which basically in Carbon Black you can ban files to keep them from running in the future, we can actually create the fixlet to go out and remove that banned file. So it's very effective in fighting those, but I think more important, just to get that basic foundation to mitigate and reduce your risk from the whole the patch cycle with the patch management, the configuration management, the vulnerability assessment, and then the asset discovery also that's a huge part of just staying secure day to day. And for those things that do slip through the bricks, we have Carbon Black to detect those and kind of put a spotlight on where those trouble areas are. Any questions about that? Okay. So there's, like I said, there's several different things that we can do. These are the fixlets and tasks. You can see where some of them were automatically created. We can also, like I said, we can deploy. We can force the sensor to check in. Gather diagnostic events on it. You can create baselines. So basically, you're checking to see how many computers need or meet a certain compliance requirement. There's also analysis and files. So in going back to this particular incident that we had, we can basically see the fixlet and task for the span file that we created. That's basically one that was pushed out. Also, you can see the fixlets and tasks for the vulnerabilities for the Windows systems. So let me just pull this up real quick. And so if we knew that this was basically caused by by Adobe, you can easily go in and go ahead and run a patch on that machine. And so that would, basically take care of it. And not even that, you can say how many machines need this patch for Adobe. So it's very easy to go through and find this missing information and to fix that. So, if there's if you can do the targeted type patching versus just starting at most critical level and working your way down, that's pretty huge. In addition,
Tom, if I could, I had a question. If you go back to the fixlets under the carbon black side of the house just for a second.
Yes.
I just noticed something I thought was really cool. So the fixlets there, so you had one that was automatically for a band file. Looking at that, I can see that it's applicable. And again, I understand BigFix. For those that don't, if you kind of look over where Tom sees the machine, so really what it would show you in your environment is any other machine that may have that file, even if something bad didn't happen yet, that integration is showing me what machines in the environment had it, and I could actually go ban the file right now before anything went wrong.
Absolutely, yeah. That's a great point. And not only that, when you do take an action on something like this, there's a lot of different ways you can do that. You can, for the execution, you can say, run it between this hour and this hour. If it fails, you try it 3 times. You can give your users a message, basically displaying a message, and you have a post action if you wanted to reboot the computer or whatever. So it's very flexible in the way that we can, not only to fix, problem, vulnerable applications, but also, pushing out applications and that sort of thing. Good point. Thank you.
And again, and I'll stop after this, just what I loved about this is, as we all know, there's a lot of tools, whether it's endpoint management, malware detection, SIMs, and so forth. But really when it comes down to it, or what we notice at Champion, is everybody has a lot of tools. It's really is, are they using them effectively, and are they integrated? And something like that, where you're demonstrating it, you have this integration in your BigFix endpoint side. We saw it happen in QRadar, and that whole integration now shows me, hey, by the way, here's all the other machines that are affected by this, and you can go plug the gap before anything goes wrong. To me, that's where the value is the integration between everything.
Absolutely, yeah, that's a good point. And just remember, this is the response side of things. We're basically doing the EDR, endpoint detect and respond. Also included in this integration is the Bit9. And Chris, if you don't mind, could you talk a little bit about Bit9 and just kind of a quick overview on this?
Yeah, absolutely. So on the CV protection, so we're looking at CV response, carbon-black CV response, and so CV protection, this is the policy side of things, and essentially what CV protection allows you to do, formerly known as Bit9, this would allow you to build a policy that will enforce zero-touch whitelisting. Now, a lot of people know what whitelisting is, but essentially this is taking it a million times further. This is true application control in the greater sense. What this allows you to do is set up a zero trust policy, so a zero touch trust policy. So what trust policy is a series of understandings on the security rules essentially, or software rules essentially. And this will put a policy that will make sure that only the trusted processes are doing anything. So it's your first step into true application control. And what this does for you is that the policy then will follow all the various rules and such that you've set up, software rules. So if you have trusted publishers or trusted processes or trusted users for that matter on a system, it will allow business as usual to happen. But if something enters the environment that is outside of that trust policy, it will simply block that from happening. So it's a way of instantiating a very high degree of application control on individual endpoints, and then it will also help you enforce that policy at many different levels. So you can lock it right down. So basically, if something comes in, can't do anything. But if you're on a developer machine, maybe you want that in a lower enforcement mode, so that agent will not simply, stop it from happening. It'll give the end user an option. And then what that also does is it advertises back. It takes the event and it records that event back, and then tells everyone, including the end user, that they are within or outside of policy, but they do have the chance to carry on with their work. So if it's a developer workstation, maybe they're running a pen test and they need something to happen. So they're going to be able to click on a response to say, yeah, go ahead and let this file do what it's going to do because I'm running my test. But we'll still take a record of that and still collect all that information. And that, in essence, is what CB protection does.
Thank you, Chris. It's perfect. So, so with this, we've had two basically phases so far. We're just starting the integration. It's a really powerful combination that we complement each other very well, Carbon Black and IBM. So I expect to see further integration. One of those is, of course, one of the aspects or features of Bit9 is it basically runs through that whole computer and it gathers all the MD5 hash values on the files. So with that, we can use like BigFix query to go and query all computers, whether they're up or down, to find out if there's a malicious file sitting out there. So, things like that I expect to be seeing in the near future. We've made some great strides. We've really been pushing the integration, and we expect to see some great things in just a short amount of time. So with that in mind, we've got 20 minutes. Dan, is there anything that you wanted to focus on besides this?
No, I think we covered it. Like I said, to me, it was that integration is, and again, from our experience from Champion, excuse me, talking with various clients, right, and anybody that's on the webinar at the moment, you probably have a whole tool set of tools. And again, what we really find is it's how people integrate them together and get the max benefit of them. And what you're showing here today to me is really the biggest strength of all of this, right? Each tool is great in its own capacity, but when you put them together in the right way is, to me, where you're just leaps and bounds in front of everybody else.
Absolutely. That's, and that's really the key thing is you want whatever you get, you want them to work together. You want them to work together correctly and play together well. Just to mention, if you have Carbon Black already in your environment or BigFix, it's very easy to POC the complementary pieces either on the IBM side or the Carbon Black side to see how well they work together in your environment. So I don't see any questions in the chat window yet. Does anybody have any questions about what they saw today? I'm assuming everybody's on mute.
I see some questions here in the chat, so I'll just go ahead and ask them.
Okay.
The first one is, we would like to see how Carbon Black blocks the ransomware/malware.
Okay, the Carbon Black Protect. Yeah, do you want to take that one, Chris, and answer how it protects from that?
Oh, how it protects? Oh, absolutely. Yeah, sorry, I thought they said they wanted to see it. Yeah, I can definitely explain that.
Yeah, I don't have a, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's fine. That's fine. No problem. Actually, if you click back into Enterprise Protection into bit 9, into that window, I can explain that. And if you click on Reports, under Reports and Events, and go to Events, yeah, just click in there. And there should be a bunch of there. I'll explain this. So the way it works is essentially you build up that trust policy. Now, when somebody comes into the environment, so if ransomware, which will be in malware, that's essentially how they're going to get it on your system. Once that enters the environment and it's discovered, even if it's trying to come in through a trusted process, so we saw that in CV response, Carbon Black CV response side, we saw how we can identify files that something hiding within a process and whatnot. So CV protection works the same way. And essentially what you're seeing is an event log of all the events that we've taken, including all of the blocks and whatnot. Now, when something comes into the environment that is not found as part of the trust policy, so we initialize on the environment and we recognize everything, and this is why, again, the automation between the solutions here is paramount in saving you considerable time, is we will be able to automatically stop and block that hash, that file hash, because we see it at that level, from doing anything. So number one, we've stopped it. Number two, we've identified it, and then we can go in and we can actually look at it. So we have all of the information, so all the attributes associated with that Tom is pointing at there, basically we can see what the process was, the source, where it was, the file name itself, what package it belongs to, as well as what it reached out to. So, right, you're getting some of that forensics data right away. But more importantly, you're stopping it. So number one is, if it's not part of the trust policy, it's simply blocked. So any piece of malware that's coming into the system will not even be able to execute. So ransomware is stopped in its tracks at that point. But then we need to investigate it further, because it could be a systemic problem, and they're going to use variants, and they're going to try to get the malware in there some way, somehow. So then we'll be able to see what this points back to. Why is it found to be malicious? What's the prevalence of this? What other variants are there of this particular file? And all that reputation information is collected as part of the CV protection agent. So we'll be able to forensically dig into this and actually see why it was blocked, and how many times it was blocked, and what machines it came to. So find patient 0, go right back to the very beginning. So essentially, you will see it in the block, and perhaps you will also get an alert that said there's been a malicious file block or a file block that you need to bring to your attention or your security architect's attention. But you'll find that inside the environment within CV protection, and most of it will be in the event log view that we're looking at here.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, thank you.
So Chris, this is Dan. I had a question, and so back to on that integration side from like, for example, BigFix and Carbon Black. Can you talk a little bit about like that whitelisting between the two, how they work together as, hey, I might be in BigFix, I might have a new software package, whatever that is, maybe it's new to the environment, that, you know, if I deploy it that way, that, you know, how they work together to say, hey, this came from a trusted source, we're going to add this to the whitelist?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a direct integration between the two, and thanks for bringing that up, Dan, because that's a good thing to mention. In terms of saving time in automation and saving time with your administrative efforts, there is, so part of the trust policy that we're building can be a patch management server. All right, so if you have WinSys or any of those older SCCM or any patch management or configuration management type of solution, we can be integrated directly into the BigFix templates. So if we update files on this side of the fence in CV protection via the patch management integration that we have, we can automatically integrate that template through to BigFix to make sure that BigFix will keep that policy intact, and then perhaps make those changes to the policy or those particular assets that are out of policy. So you've just covered from point A to point B in the spectrum of ensuring perfect patch management and synchronization between all of your assets, because CV protection here on this side will know what files now are allowed to be in this particular system. But what it doesn't know is what BigFix knows, is that, hey, these files are missing on this particular asset, and these are known vulnerabilities on this asset. So by making those two connections together, you can ensure that your patch management process is 100% across all of your assets, which is crucial in eliminating a ransomware period. Because, again, those malicious files may not necessarily hit these high critical endpoints in terms of getting that data. It might come in through a different assets, that an atypical asset, as I was describing earlier. So that integration is crucial. But that's done at several points within CD protection and BigFix, and particularly our automatic integration into patch management and any updates to that, which then update our trust policy, which then is in perfect sync and integrated with the templates inside of BigFix.
And I think that's great, and because the whole idea of, whitelist, blacklist, graylist is not a new concept, but when you get into organizations and the more and more endpoints and the more complex it was the management of it that was unattainable, and having that type of automation is now saying, yes, you could actually achieve this, right? And really, again, I look at that from the integration standpoint of having these products integrated. It's really, not only lowering your man hours, it's just letting you say, hey, I can actually do this whitelisting, right? It's manageable.
Absolutely, and if you look at the market trends, and especially within healthcare, that is one of the leading things. I identified that earlier in the statistic from the healthcare survey. That is one of the leading things that most organizations are still struggling with, is that they need to shore up those integration points between technologies, this threat information, the templates, and then the policy, which is exactly what this integration is doing between Carbon Black, BigFix, and QRadar for that matter.
And again, point, because that brings up which hardly is a discussion in security, right? It's always, hey, this lets you sleep better at night. But if you really think about what is really happening there, it's really a return on investment in man hours, right? Plain and simple. You can do more with less. And again, that's why I think the integration is the key points here.
Absolutely. Agreed.
Yeah, absolutely. Stacy, is there any other questions out there?
I'm looking here.
Yeah.
It says, in Carbon Black response, how does remediation work?
Sure. So Carbon Black response remediation, it definitely, what it does is it feeds over to the BigFix side. So once, an event occurs, let me go to, get over to the correct location here. Vulnerabilities. Let me just get up here. So what's really cool about this is, I'm sorry, once the impacted computer is actually affected, it will actually generate a fixlet to correct that action or remediate that action. So let me get to the right location. Sorry, it changed names on me just recently. Give me here we go. Manage vulnerabilities, fixlets and task, dashboards. Sorry, they changed this on me just recently. So I forgot to mention this, but what's really cool about this is once the machine's been intact, you can actually see what actually happened. So you can see we are running Adobe 9.34. Basically, it says to address this vulnerability, to go ahead and correct or remediate that action by pushing out this fixlet. These are the computers that were involved. Good guy. So it's very easy again, and that's the key integration point is once a machine's been violated or had an attack against it, it immediately creates this, it feeds that CVE value over to BigFix and tells you what fixlet you need to remediate that action. Does that answer your question? Very, very key point, though, for the integration piece.
And that brings up another point just in patch management, right? And just when we're talking security in general, and again, just experience talking to a lot of customers, it's where do they start, right? Hey, I got all these endpoints, I got all these different patches, where do they start? And again, having these integrations for QRadar, just kind of how you showed the CVE scoring, can really help direct folks for their SLAs, right? Making sure, hey, we're taking care of the critical systems first, we're taking care of the high vector targets from a CVE scoring perspective, and really helping you drive how you're going to do your patch management and remediation from that perspective.
Absolutely, yeah, that's huge, and you know, and CVE scoring is big, and that's where most people start because they don't have visibility into what's going on in the network. So the best they can do is take the most critical patches and apply those and work their way down. By the time they get down to medium criticalities, they're usually highly critical actions that need to be taken. So people never get caught up, and it takes me back to that original point where really just about 2% of the PCs out there are fully patched at any time.
Correct, and again, for folks that have, you know, a mixed environment, you might have some spread of Linux or Unix or maybe some Mac, some Windows, and applications. You know, when you look at the vendor side of it, you know, they don't always fall very nicely into critical warning and NIST. They use their own terminology, you know, Cat 3 or different types of criticality. So again, being able to leverage that CVS scoring side of it, to me, is very nice because it kind of levels that playing field of, hey, this is your risk vector, regardless of the operating system, regardless of what the vendor said the criticality was. It gives you really a true sense of you know, where you need to focus a little bit of time.
Absolutely. And with just a few minutes left, Stacey, is there anything else that we can answer?
I don't see anything else in the chat queue.
Okay. Well, Dan, in the interest of time, I don't want to keep anybody on board unless there's something else that you want to talk about or point out. Might be a good time to give everybody back a couple minutes.
Yeah, we give everybody a few minutes back to their afternoon. Again, Chris and Tom, thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciated it. Thank you for everybody out there that joined today. Again, as we said, we will follow up with some information about Carbon Black, about BigFix, about QRadar, and so forth, and about Champion in general. But again, just wanted to thank everybody for spending a little time with us again, for everybody who attended, and of course our panelists and our demo driver today, Tom. So thank you very much.